G'day, legends. So yesterday was a Misfits boxing press conference, and it actually dawned on me that, oh my god, Tony Ferguson is going to lose in a boxing match to Salt Pappy or Salt Bay or Pappy Wappy. I don't understand what these Gen Zs call each other. But Tony Ferguson is going to be doing a boxing fight, and we are once again going to have to see Tony Ferguson be absolutely victimized on pay-per-view. And it brought me great sadness. And then I thought, well, that's also kind of hilarious, because as much as we want Tony to stop, he just keeps doing it to himself. So why not celebrate Tony Ferguson getting his hat back into the combat sports ring by doing a UFC victims tier list? That's right, these are the biggest victims to ever grace the UFC octagon. And this is how we are going to be qualifying the victims in UFC history. There is, the bottom level of the tier list, which is, it could happen to anyone. These victim nights, this could happen to anyone. This could happen to anyone. It's not so bad. Then the second tier up is the Rose Namajunas level of victim, where she was very clearly a victim, but things seem to be going well for her. At least she was a victim of being groomed by Pat Barry, but she's having a good time with it. It doesn't affect her that much, right? And then the next level up is, of course, John Jones's retirement, a victim of the absolute abuse that the MMA community gave him. What a horrible retirement he got. It was nothing like Dustin Poirier, so much so that John Jones had to just do a mulligan on his retirement and come back not 2 weeks later. Then the second highest level of victimhood in the UFC is, of course, us listening to any of Joe Rogan's commentary on a pay-per-view. Just horrible. And then the S tier level of being a UFC victim is Ariel Helwani, right? Doing actual journalism around the UFC. Heaven forbid someone in the UFC actually does some journalism instead of just asking the fighters, hey, Dustin, what does a win to you this weekend mean? Right, now that we've established our levels of victimhood, let's get right into it. Who are some of the biggest victims to have ever graced the UFC octagon, at least as far as my memory can go? Well, of course, one of them has to be William Knight. I don't know if you guys remember old William Knight, but he had one of the worst performances we have ever seen. Did I take any notes? Right, he fought Marcin Prachnio. I believe it was at the Apex, would have been UFC Vegas 87. I made that last part up. But he definitely fought Marcin Prachnio, and William Knight just turned into a bloody heavy bag. He did nothing that night, old William, except stand there and get the legs kicked out of him. What is the point of having all that girth, vascularity, muscle, thickness? What is the point of all of that if you were just going to stand there and become a heavy bag? Marcin Prachnio, and I mean this in the most literal sense, kicked the fucking life out of him, to the point where he was instantly cut from the UFC, and many people around the community thought that there must have been some sort of gambling suspicions going on. He had such a horrible night. Now, some people here on this tier list are going to be repeat offenders on being victimized. So, look, Martin Knight, he had a bad... William Knight? Why am I saying Martin Knight? William Knight had one bad night against Marcin Prachnio. There we go. William Knight had one bad night against Marcin Prachnio, and then he was cut. But he wasn't repeatedly victimized again and again and again and again. So, anyone can have a bad night. Anyone can have a bad night. I'm not afraid to admit, boys, that on some nights out, I've had a bad night myself. You know what I mean? My legs didn't perform that night either. We've all been there. We've all had bad nights. The point is that you get back in there and you improve. That's the real thing here. Moving on. What should we do next? Moving on. Ooh. Tyrone Woodley, the night that he fought Kamaru Usman. Oh my god, Tyrone Woodley. There's Kamaru Usman over there. But let's really focus on Tyrone Woodley, the night that he fought Kamaru Usman. He got so badly pummeled. It was one of those nights, much like the night that Kamaru Usman just takes people's souls away. And Kamaru Usman did it to Joaquin Buckley. Kamaru Usman is a bad man. He's a bad man. Kamaru Usman is a bad man, I'm telling you. He's done this to 3 people, taken their souls inside of the octagon. In fact, I would even say that on the second fight with Cody Garbrandt. No. He's a dickhead. American. Constantly overplaying Donald Trump. What's his name? Colby Covington, right? Much like the Colby Covington was never the same after the second Kamaru Usman fight. Kamaru Usman is a goddamn soul snatcher. We need to have a conversation about this on the live stream. But either way, I digress. Tyrone Woodley had the life sucked out of him to the point where Joe Rogan was like, he's just not responsive. He doesn't want to be in there. He's giving up. And he did, man. He had this look on his face. But from the 3rd round, 4th round, and 5th round of just, when is this going to be over? And then I'll never forget this image here. There's a reason I picked this image here. Just a defeated Tyrone Woodley standing there in his undies. The complete opposite of Derek Lewis, who stands there in his undies, loud and proud, girth maxing, just happy to be there. No, Tyrone Woodley had his soul absolutely snatched from him by Kamaru Usman, who went on to do it again several times since. Kamaru Usman is a scary human being, like I said. But this was a bad... And then, you turned into such a victim, that you went on to get your ass whooped by Jake Paul. I mean, that is a... There can only be one nest here. But this is a John, he didn't bounce back from this. Like, John Jones might bounce back from his fake retirement. This was a big one. This was us listening to Joe Rogan's commentary again and again and again, level of victimization. He was victimized forever. Tyrone Woodley hasn't had a win since that night in any capacity. His rap career, fighting Jake Paul, his private video that he put out, it wasn't putting in that much work, you know what I mean? You'd expect more from a world athlete than just some lazy licks like a dog that's just dying in the heat. Yeah, Tyrone Woodley hasn't had a win since that very night. Next one up on the UFC victims list has got to be Johnny Bloody Walker, mate. Johnny Walker. What can you say, man? Johnny, on some of these, I'm going to be like, remember that night this bloke was absolutely victimized? Johnny Walker doesn't have a remember that night, man, because... they're all that night for Johnny Walker. Johnny Walker blew his own shoulder out doing the worm, mate. Johnny Walker, if he gets up out of bed too hard in the morning, he goes back to sleep because of the G-forces. Johnny Walker he's just a walking, talking victim. But, I tell you what, I've got to put Johnny Walker in the Rose Namajunas category because much like Rose Namajunas being victimized by Pat Barry, he just seems to be having a good time with it. Rose is happy. Johnny Walker's happy. He's quite happy to get back in there. He's going to be going back in there again against another absolute destroyer, the new Chinese bloke that Anthony Smith just got destroyed by. We'll get to him. Don't worry about that. But Johnny Walker is just going to crack a big smile and he's like, yep, I'm going to get knocked out again. It's going to be a great bloody time. So Johnny Walker, he's a Rose Namajunas level victim if there ever was one. He essentially defines the Rose Namajunas level of victimhood. It's like me when I keep clicking on to do a live stream. I know I'm about to get abused by the live chat for about an hour and a half, but I just keep coming back for some reason. There is something about that sadistic level of being, a sadistic level of being. Sadistic, masochistic. I think it's where you self-harm and enjoy it. Is it masochistic? I think it's masochistic. But there's something about that level that me, Johnny Walker, and Rose Namajunas just seem to possess with each other. It's a very weird thing. It's a very real thing. Next one up on the ultimate victims list is Kron Gracie, especially against Charles Jourdain. Have you ever seen such an embarrassing, worm-like performance from a human being? This is what was so horrible about what Kron Gracie did against Charles Jourdain on that very night. It was that he let down not just himself, but the entire Gracie lineage. He sort of closed the chapter on the old era of MMA in the most embarrassing way possible, and he's never really bounced back from that. He was in there, in the most literal sense, as a victim, and it was horrible to watch. And I don't think you could say that this could happen to anybody, because this wasn't just a bad night, you know what I mean? He went in there with that game plan. He didn't just William Knight. And it was William Knight, Mark Knight, who cares? William Knight, I'm sure it was William Knight. He didn't just go in there like William Knight. I don't know, I shut the bed that night. I don't know what happened. No, this was his plan. His plan was to continuously boot scoot around the cage to see if he could somehow heel hawk Jourdain while Jourdain was standing up and could easily just remove his foot from the position. I don't in a fight that isn't just grappling rules, I don't understand what was going through Mr. Gracie's head here. And he absolutely ruined his entire lineage. That has got to be a John Jones level of retirement. Like, John Jones ruined his entire lineage with that retirement and ducking Tom Aspinall, as did Kron Gracie. And Kron Gracie might come back to do a couple of jiu-jitsu matches. He might even come back to the UFC jiu-jitsu side of things on Fight Pass. But you ruined a legacy with that one, Kron. You ruined a legacy with that kind of one. Another one for the level of, I would say, Joe Rogan's retirement is, of course, CM Punk. CM Punk was the victim of victims in the UFC. God, he was horrible. And when he was in there against this guy, what was this guy's name? Jackson. What was his name? Mickey Jackson. Michael Jackson. William Jackson. I don't remember his first name, but I remember this goddamn fight. You know, CM Punk didn't do horribly in the first round. Now, his first fight against Mickey Gall. Mickey Gall. Good-looking fella. His first fight against Mickey Gall, that was just an obliteration, straight away. But in this one, Damon Jackson was the bloke's name. In this one against Damon Jackson, CM Punk was kind of okay for the first half of round one. And then he just faded so quickly, and Damon Jackson had absolutely zero intention of finishing him inside of that cage, and just continued to lazily posture up and sort of half-heartedly beat him up. And the crowd was so enraged because he could have gotten CM Punk out of there, but he just chose to take it all the way to a decision. Once again, I presume there was some dodgy gambling going on, because that is the only way that Damon Jackson could have taken this to a decision, is that if he wanted to hit that goes to a decision parlay. But either way, he could have graped him. He could have graped him. Like, there was absolutely zero chance of CM Punk defending himself in any situation. Absolute embarrassment. But still, I'm going to put this one in John Jones level as well, because CM Punk, although he never bounced back in the MMA sense, I do believe that he went on and continued to have a fairly decent career over at the WWE, where those children simply do not care if a human being has the ability to defend themselves or not. They can still oil themselves up and look like a badass. I mean, they accepted Ronda Rousey. What the hell is wrong with those kind of people? So yeah, I think the fact that he could bounce back puts him in a John Jones level of retirement sort of victimization. But now we are getting into the real who's who. Now we're getting into where the wheat is separated by the... This is the good stuff here. These are the elite of the elite victims in the UFC. Of course, we're talking Anthony Smith. And I don't just mean the Anthony Smith Glover Teixeira fight. No. I mean every single Anthony Smith fight from the beginning of the third round against John Jones onward. This is Anthony Smith's peak go-to move. Glover Teixeira smashed Anthony Smith's teeth out, and Glover went, "I'm sorry, brother." And Anthony went, "It is what it is." And then after the unfortunateness happened with Anthony Smith's coach, Anthony Smith went into the cage purely to get himself hurt. Against his last fight against the Chinese bloke name, who I'm still forgetting, and I could Google it, but who cares? We'll get to. I'll remember it when I remember it. It'll come to me eventually. But this has been Anthony Smith's entire career. His entire career. Since about the middle of 2018. Just again and again and again and again and again. And again, and again, and again, and again. And for that, much like us having to watch Anthony Smith curl up into a ball and have the living piss beaten out of him again and again and again and again and again, it's very similar to us having to listen to Joe Rogan's commentary and being victimized by, oh my God, man, he better get out of there. Benson Henderson, man, came up with the kill kit. Anyway, you get the picture I'm painting, even if I don't anymore. Alright, I've only got a couple left, boys. The man, the myth, the legend, the one that inspired the victims tier list, Tony El Kukui Ferguson. This photo was taken of the night of Justin Gaethje, just doing horrible things to him in a merciful stoppage in the 5th round, because Tony Ferguson had been beaten to such a pulp that he started throwing imaginary sand at Justin Gaethje. That's correct. If you hadn't have watched that fight, if you only know about the legend that is Tony Ferguson, it hurts me to know that there is an entire generation of young gambling addicted men that have started watching the UFC recently. They're about 18 years old, they're about 21 years old, and they only know Tony Ferguson as the bum victim of the UFC that's never won a fight. Oh God! I'm becoming an Anderson Silva fan, man. I can feel myself getting old. I can hear my bones crack in my body as I move around to record this video. I can feel the MMA age upon me. This used to have a Reebok logo on it, but it faded away. I can feel myself getting old, but there was a time when Tony Ferguson was going through a murderer's fucking row. Tony Ferguson was the man until Justin Gaethje destroyed him. And I'd love to just say that that was that. You know what I mean? I'd love to just say that that was that. But Tony Ferguson went on to just continue to have his ass handed to him. I'm very seriously considering putting him at S tier. Ariel Helwani actually doing journalism. But he is... like, even Anthony Smith isn't going to be fighting anymore. And Tony's going to get his head kicked in by Salt Puppy. So Tony takes the A spot. He might even take the S spot. I'll move someone to the S spot when this video is done. These guys are all S tier. All S tier. I mean, there's no coming back for Tyron Woodley. They're all candidates for S tier. Let's move on to the next one. The next victim is, of course, Jon Jones' wife. Jon Jones' beautiful wife has been a victim of Jon Jones' allegations. Jon Jones' she's actually been an actual victim of Jon Jones, funnily enough. Didn't choose to press charges against him. Being a victim of his steroid abuse and how that does cause mood swings when your body isn't getting the levels of testosterone that it was once used to. He had the testosterone levels of a castrated man. We all know that. She has been victimized in so many ways. In so many ways, by Jon Jones. Just his reputation, his legacy, the fact that it's a very sad story. Poor old Jon Jones' wife. Where do we put her? Where do we put Jon Jones' wife? She might be the S tier of the victim list. And like everyone else, and us listening to Joe Rogan's commentary, it still goes on to this very day. And the special mention, the last shout out on the victims tier list before we crown the S tier out of this top. I don't know who I'm going to make the S tier out of this top. But one more special mention is, of course, all of Indian MMA. I'm sorry, guys. It's just sports banter. Again, if you were into cricket, you'd understand Australia versus India and the back and forth. But all of Indian MMA, men's Indian MMA. Anshul Jabli hasn't won a fight. The bloke from Road to the UFC this season, literally left the season crying. The poor bastard on Tough got the shit kicked out of him. Just men's Indian MMA. You know what? I'm going to put them in the special shout out. I'm going to put men's Indian MMA into the Rose Namajunas tier. Yeah, they've been absolutely victimized, but I tell you what, they are a group of positive people. Sir, we will be a UFC champion one day, sir. One day, sir, I tell you, we will become UFC champions. They're the Rose Namajunas level. They're having a good time with it, mate. They're not letting it keep them down. They know one day, out of 20 billion people, surely they will be able to get a win in the men's divisions in the UFC. Just one. Just one. Alright, who are we crowning as the absolute S-tier victim? Will it be Jon Jones' wife? Will it be Tyron Woodley getting his soul taken by Kamaru Usman? Will it be Anthony Smith and his entire career? Or is the biggest victim of all time, Tony Ferguson? I think it's Tony, man. I mean, even Anthony knew when it was time to walk away. You know, like, Anthony's last words in the octagon were 5 years ago. That was a winnable fight. Implying that these are no longer winnable fights. Have you seen Tony's interviews for Misfits this week or in the upcoming weeks? He 100% believes he's still got it in him. In fact, according to Tony's maths, he 110% believes that he's still... Tony has got to be S-tier levels of victimhood. He is Ariel Helwani doing actual journalism around the UFC levels of victimhood. That's it, boys. That is Jon Jones' wife in India. This one's fucking cooked. This is a bad one. I'm just a cheeky Australian. Oh, these are just jokes. What that cheeky Aussie? He's probably drunk. Oh, give him a pass. Go on, mate. He's just having a laugh. This was a bad one. Oh. Oh, this was a bad one. This was a bad one. But hey, it was a good time. I had a good time. Did you have a good time? I had a good time filming this. Did you have a good time watching it? Let me know down there in the comments. If this is your first time here, g'day, my name's Dougie, and I'm just a cheeky Australian, I tell you what, mate. And I try and make an MMA video every single day of the week, and I try and go live at least 3 times a week, but it's pretty often these days. So if you want to know when I go live, you want to know when a new video drops, hit the like button, hit the subscription button and the notification bell so you know when that drops. If you like this video, give it a like. If you're a supporter of John Jones, you probably didn't. That's okay. If you're from India, it's just jokes, mate. You can win a fight, you know, and then all this stops. So leave a like or a dislike, whichever side of the aisle you're on. And if you're one of the paying members of the channel, or you're one of the writers, you're always commentating, you're always watching, commenting, watching, all that good stuff, supporting the channel, I bloody love you guys. That's why your names are up on the next slide. And until then, you guys have yourselves a great day. I'll see you in the next video. Goodbye.